In 1999, trapped in a nightmare of abuse, a determined 13-year-old and her resolute 12-year-old brother crossed a line of no return. They killed the woman who was abusing them with a bullet to the head. Today, we look at 5 cases of children who took violent revenge on their abusers. Catherine and Curtis Jones. Catherine and Curtis Jones, a brother and sister, began their journey in a small town with their father, a grumpy and unpredictable man who was left in charge after their mom left years ago. Once he rude, though, the siblings would only endure prolonged physical and sexual abuse. The primary perpetrator was their father's wife, but the abuse extended to other adults within their household. The children's pleas for help were repeatedly ignored by those who were supposed to protect them, leaving them feeling isolated and desperate. The weight of their pain was heavy. Catherine, the older one, became fiercely protective of Curtis, their bond built in the fire of shared suffering. They confided in each other, clinging to dreams of escape for a better future, but as time passed, their hope faded. On a cold January morning in 1999, the anger that had been simmering finally exploded. The siblings decided that the only way to escape their torment was to remove the source of their pain permanently. Armed with a handgun, they took the lives of their father's wife and attempted to target another abuser living with them. However, their plan to kill the third abuser was never realized. Running into the woods, they sought shelter in the only place they felt safe, together. But their escape didn't last long. Caught the next day, they faced a justice system that didn't understand what they had been through. Their trial, which didn't take into account the abuse they suffered, painted them as cold-blooded killers, driven by nothing more than teenage anger and jealousy. Sentenced to spend 18 years locked up, they served their time, forever marked by what they did and the failures of those who should have helped them. Released as adults, they stepped back into a world that had moved on, leaving them to deal with the ghosts of their past and the burden of a label they didn't deserve. Lisa McVey. What happens when you're kidnapped by a notorious serial killer? The answer lies in this young girl who, after a daring escape, takes brutal revenge on her abuser. At a mere 17, Lisa McVey's world was a dark place. Trapped in a cycle of abuse at her grandmother's house, she was close to giving up. Then, fate threw her into an even deeper hole when Bobby Joe Long, a serial killer, kidnapped her during a late-night bike ride. What seemed like the end, though, was actually going to prove to be the beginning of an incredible tale of survival. Imagine being grabbed off the street and fearing the worst. For 26 hours, Lisa lived every second in fear, bound and at the mercy of a monster. But here's where the story twists. During her captivity, McVey displayed an extraordinary presence of mind. Despite being blindfolded and in constant danger, she carefully memorized details about Long and the environment. McVey left her fingerprints in Long's apartment as a way to leave evidence behind in case she did not survive. Her strategic thinking extended even to manipulating Long's perceptions of her, convincing him to release her by appealing to his sympathies and fabricating stories that made her seem valuable to keep alive. The aftermath of her release was almost as traumatic as the abduction itself, with McVey facing disbelief and further abuse at home. However, once she went to the authorities, they matched the red fibers found on McVey's clothes to those found on other victims, further linking Long to the crimes. Additionally, McVey's description of Long's vehicle and her recounting of being taken to an ATM provided pivotal leads. Investigators were able to find Long registered as the owner of a Dodge Magnum and confirmed his ATM usage near his apartment around the time McVey mentioned. Her identification of Long from a selection of photos was the final piece needed for his arrest. Long was arrested outside a movie theater on November 16, 1984, and charged with the sexual battery and kidnapping of Lisa McVey. During questioning, Long initially resisted admitting to the murders, but eventually confessed to multiple murders and rapes after detectives presented overwhelming evidence and confronted him with the details of the crimes. But Lisa's story didn't end with her escape. She transformed her traumatic experience into a force for good, joining law enforcement and specializing in sex crimes, dedicating her life to protecting others and preventing them from suffering as she did. Her work as a middle school resource officer and her participation in media and public speaking engagements further exemplify her commitment to educating others about personal safety and resilience. Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Gypsy Rose Blanchard's childhood was a web of lies spun by her mother, Dee Dee. Dee Dee pretended Gypsy was sick, making her take unnecessary meds and surgeries, but Gypsy wasn't sick. and when she grew up, she decided to fight back. Dee Dee, you see, told everyone, including Gypsy, that she was ill. This situation is known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver makes up or causes an illness in the person they're taking care of for attention and sympathy. Gypsy's life, resultantly, was filled with unnecessary medical treatments and surgeries. People felt sorry for them and helped them out, not knowing the truth. But when Gypsy became a teenager, she started to question everything. She secretly used the internet and talked to people online, which is how she met Nicholas Gardajon. Soon enough, Gypsy and Nicholas fell in love and made a drastic plan to end Dee Dee's control over Gypsy's life. Nicholas traveled to Gypsy's home in Missouri from Wisconsin to carry out their plan, and in June 2015, while Gypsy waited in the bathroom with her ears covered, Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee multiple times in her sleep. After the murder, Gypsy and Nicholas fled to his home in Wisconsin, thinking they could start a new life together. However, their freedom was short-lived. Authorities quickly traced the murder back to them, leading to their arrest. After Dee Dee's death, the truth about Gypsy's health and the lies Dee Dee told shocked everyone. However, people couldn't decide if she was a victim of her mom's abuse or if she was guilty of planning the murder. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison for her role in her mom's death, while Nicholas received a life sentence, showing the difference in how they were seen by the law. Gypsy got out of prison early, though, in 2023, starting a new part of her life. Chris Sutton. In Coral Gables, Florida, a shocking story unfolded that felt like it was taken straight from a crime movie, but with a twist that caught everyone off guard. John and Susan Sutton, a well-known couple in their area, seemed to have it all. John was a successful lawyer, and Susan ran his office. They were celebrating Susan's 57th birthday and recent successes with their family, including their 25-year-old son, Christopher, and his fiancée. But the celebration turned into a nightmare when John was found shot in the head while he slept, and Susan was discovered dead, having been shot 6 times. It looked like a deliberate attack, not a robbery, because none of their valuable things were stolen, and the way Susan was killed was very cold and calculated. The investigation quickly turned into a tangled mess of lies, betrayal, and deep anger. Christopher Sutton, the son, became a key focus, not because of where he was that night, but because of his rocky past and the tough times he had with his parents. Christopher had been in trouble with the law before and had spent time at Paradise Cove, a strict boarding school in Samoa. This school was supposed to help him change, but it only made him angrier. The big break in the case came when Garrett Kopp, someone Christopher knew, was found with a gun that matched the bullets from the crime scene. Kopp admitted to a scary plan. Christopher wanted to get rid of his parents as payback for his rough times at Paradise Cove, hoping to get money from their insurance. This showed Christopher as someone who was so filled with revenge that he planned his own parents' murder to get back at them for his past. At Christopher Sutton's trial, the dark secrets of what seemed like a successful and happy family were revealed. He was found guilty of murder and trying to murder, and was given 3 life sentences without the chance of parole. Nicole Nachtman. A community in Florida was left shocked when it discovered the lifeless bodies of a woman and a man, both victims of Nicole Nachtman, a 25-year-old student at her breaking point. This incident happened with Nicole at Florida State University. However, the real story starts way back. From a young age, Nicole faced constant criticism and physical harm from her mother, Miriam, who was described by many as very strict and demanding. Miriam, a captain and nurse in the Navy, had high expectations and often expressed her disappointment in Nicole in harmful ways. Witnesses and experts shared stories about Miriam's harsh behavior, including insulting Nicole about her weight and forcing her to undergo unnecessary medical procedures like liposuction and laser eye surgery. Nicole's mental health was a significant concern, with signs of severe distress and illness. She struggled in social situations, was often seen wearing too many clothes for the Florida heat, and had unusual habits like sleeping during the day and staying awake at night. She also had a deep interest in Japanese anime and the movie Frozen, which some saw as an escape from her reality. Nicole even mentioned hearing voices and receiving signs from God, pointing to a troubled mind. The culmination of these difficulties led to a tragic decision. Nicole was worried about not having a place to live for the upcoming college semester, which added to her stress. In a state of panic and confusion, she laid out a plan that resulted in the deaths of Miriam and Robert. First, she took the life of her stepfather, Robert, and hid his body in a bedroom. Then, She waited a day for her mother to return from a work trip and shot her outside their home. A neighbor reported hearing the distressing sounds of gunshots and saw a shadowy figure fleeing the scene. After the killings, Nicole tried to cover her tracks. She cleaned up but left behind evidence, including her thumbprint in blood. She stayed in the house for a day, then drove to Tallahassee, where she was arrested the following day. During the trial, the defense focused on Nicole's mental state, arguing that she was a victim of long-term abuse and suffered from schizophrenia, which made her believe her mother was going to harm her. However, the jury found Nicole guilty of first-degree murder, deciding that her actions were deliberate and not solely the result of her mental illness. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole.